Content warning. This recording contains references to suicide, mental health issues, and addiction. If you or someone you know is struggling, please seek help from a local crisis support center. Hello and welcome to True Colors with Mark Ruschielli.
Welcome to True Colors Podcast. I'm Mark Ruschielli. Thank you for joining us. Today on True Colors, we are pleased to be joined by Mandi Fields from the Canadian Mental Health Association of Thames Valley Addiction and Mental Health Services. Mandi has spent decades in turning ideas into movements, creating community initiatives that address mental health, housing, dignity, and belonging. From founding Tampon Tuesday to helping build housing solutions through the Imagine Build, she has dedicated her career to helping people feel seen, valued, and supported. Her contributions to community development and social impact were recently recognized with an honorary diploma from Fanshawe College, a testament to her lasting difference she continues to make throughout our region. Today, we're talking about mental health, resilience, leadership, community connection, and what it truly means to live authentically. Mandi, welcome to True Colors.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for being here. I want to ask you firstly who Mandi Fields is and why you do what you do. And
wow, that's it. That it feels like a big question, but I mean it's really not. So it's funny. My immediate thought I'm going to roles. You know, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I work, I'm a sister, but you know, I think I live hard, I give hard, I love hard.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's who I am. I play hard. Yep.
Amazing. And tell us a little bit of how you got to where you're at.
And so I do freelance. So I worked at Bell Media, across southwestern Ontario, and then some of the ideas caught fire. So Tampon Tuesday, when I developed that in 2009, I was working at A Channel at the time before it,
Wow.
before it merged with, I think it was CTV, and then Bell purchased CTV, and so in many iterations of the local station. And I was told one day that, you know, we like your ideas, but you need to figure out how to make money if you want to support the community. And my role was community relations at the time. And so that really kind of shifted the way I looked at my community impact. And I was a single mom at the time, so keeping my job was it was real. I needed to keep my job, so I really needed to think about how do I create authentically and meet the needs of the community while also bringing in revenue for the company to keep myself employed. And so for many years I did that, and then worked across the province and then ultimately across Canada to really make impact in communities all over the country.
Wow. And I'll premise how you and I first started talking. It was about a year ago, last summer, when Triggerama, your podcast that you're involved with CMHA, which is doing some wonderful work. I was fortunate enough to be on that podcast. And then just recently, through the Behind the Lines event for first responders, which comes close to my heart, that role there and what you were doing with the crisis center, the awareness, what a gift that is for those that truly need it at the moment and those that aren't aware of its impact, but will certainly be recipients in the future. I'm so very grateful for you, your team, and what you're doing, because it's not easy raising money in today's society, especially for raising money for certain aspects. There's people more apt to give to certain things, and especially an invisible injury, it's sometimes can be very difficult for people to understand. So I really appreciate, from my perspective, what you do. And maybe you could tell us a little bit, and I'm more intrigued too, because I need to know more, and I'd like to hear it from you, what Tampon Tuesdays is and the impact that it's now created.
Oh, Tampon Tuesday. I call her a she. She feels like a real living, breathing person. I developed it in 2009 in my role at CTV and Community Relations. Had a tour of the London Food Bank for the Spring Food Drive. And so that's the story. So I went into the food bank. I was with a news director and one of the anchors at the time, and saw the need in the non-food item cupboard where they had toilet paper, shampoo, diapers, but there were no menstrual hygiene products. And I saw it immediately, and I saw it because I lived it, like so many of us, right? When you have a certain path in life, whatever your journey is, you see things. You just see, it's your lens of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 17 when my mother passed, and I'm one of 7 kids. And so we're poor. And so we lived it. I have like 3 sisters, so there's 4 girls in the house. So period poverty, those were 2 words that I'd never even thought about before. When you go without this necessary monthly item, that's shame.
Mm-hmm.
You figure it out. You don't talk about it. It's embarrassing. It's something that happens to women and girls naturally. It's our bodies. For some reason in our culture, in Western culture, it's really seen as dirty and gross and taboo, which is pretty fascinating for me when I actually, we're like life givers, we make babies, and how the two are absolutely connected,
Mm-hmm.
but yet there's all the shame around it. So that day in 2009 when Tampon Tuesday was born, because I literally said, why don't we have a Tampon Tuesday? Because I also heard that day from Jane Roy and Glenn Pearson, who are the co-executive directors of the food bank, said,
You do a wonderful job.
They are incredible people,
Mm-hmm.
and they got behind the idea immediately because they shared that menstrual hygiene products are the most requested yet least donated items of food banks, and not just in London, but across the board. And I think that's why when Tampon Tuesday was born, the name is just quirky enough. It's bold enough, but it also is a bit disarming.
Mm-hmm.
It's not too, it's quirky. It's not in your face aggressive.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, what's that? And so I think that's why it struck a chord, but it still stands. And there's a Tampon Tuesday. And I don't want to timestamp this, but there's a Tampon Tuesday tonight. And I think that the reason why 18 years later is because the need is great. The need is real. The face of poverty, majority is female.
Mm-hmm.
And as a mom, you will go between like food or this necessary monthly item. You will feed your kids. You will buy the bag of milk over the box of menstrual hygiene products. And I think that's why the a lot of events have 2 or 3 year life cycle. This one's everywhere, and that's the other reason why I call her a she, because I can't contain her. Like, she is a butterfly. She pops up, she flies, she goes, and I see it. And all you have to do is Google Tampon Tuesday to see the impact and its reach.
I dove into a little bit of that, and that's why I was excited for you to answer that question. It's amazing. I have a premise, and I think it falls here too, that it doesn't matter what it was, it matters what it does. Mm-hmm. And whether you have a quirky name, a catchy name, if it's a name that makes people pay attention, that's the goal.
Yeah.
And I think that's beautiful, because there may be some people that not mature enough to laugh past that. But when it comes down to mentioning their mom, their sister, now I'm picking on guys, but mentioning anything to not have that necessity in their life, it's so overlooked. And obviously it is for donations. And thank you for mentioning that for the food bank, because I think people need to understand that.
And you're right. And the actual concept of Tampon Tuesday is so simple. People show up, they donate a box of tampons or pads. We have a few guest speakers, and people go home. And so the location sponsor, whoever it is, they'll put out some food. The people drink. It's cash and carry. I joke, but I do believe that Tampon Tuesday was the beginning of my drinking problem, because I was so afraid that I would lose the location sponsor, because it was a paid location sponsor, Jack Astor's in London. They said yes to hosting. And people were shocked that a bar would say yes, because, and I think it's because of our thoughts around menstrual hygiene products.
Mm-hmm.
And it could also be just low-key misogyny, that people would think people won't actually get behind something like this.
Mm-hmm.
That the importance of putting visibility on this issue is significant. And the fact that people would show up, they would bring these donations in. But the piece that I love about it, aside from the donations, is that these guest speakers, and giving these guest speakers a real opportunity to shine a spotlight on the work that they're doing, that has got to be one of my most favorite things to do with that project. It's great.
That's really good. And that also, if those speakers have connections, if they have networks, right, it kind of promotes that connective.
That's what sustains and maintains it. So tonight, for example, a local band, No Exceptions, they're the speakers because the event is in Mount Bridges, and that's their local. So we're pulling in the local music scene. Brett Lucier, who owns Glass Provincial, he runs the Fight to End Homelessness, and CMHA. So I appreciate you acknowledging that's one of my contracts. So I do contract work and create campaigns and mobilize. Well, the Fight to End Homelessness just picked CMHA as one of their beneficiaries for their great event that will be held in November. So Brett and his wife, Crystal Moore, they will be speaking. And then there's a woman named Molly Clark, who I've never met, but one of our ambassadors, a young woman named Michaela Jackman. Michaela she's just awesome. She's a young woman in our community, and she's grinding it out. She's drawing attention to period poverty however she can. Whenever I see a young woman come forward and want to jump into this space, to try and engage them as much as possible, so it's not like a one and done.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost think of it like setting the table and inviting people for dinner. So you can stay as long as you want, or you can just eat the meal and get out. And Michaela's decided to stay. So she said, I think we should have Molly Clark. So I'm excited to meet Molly tonight. And that's how we roll. And then the Brendan Jones, who said, hey, I want to host a Tampon Tuesday. And then we always have that, who's ever hosting, give them an opportunity to thank people for showing up. But also it'll raise the profile of the still a little bit. Maybe people haven't heard about the restaurant just outside of London in Mount Bridges. It's a great local eatery. They have live music. So that's the other fun piece about Tampon Tuesday. Every event's different.
And that's unique itself,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not a black tie or Saturday nights and $200 tickets. And when there's things that we can make the impact and also meet some really interesting people.
Mm-hmm.
And music's always I'm a big fan of music and the way it connects people. And I'm excited to hear how that goes. And this will be posted post. So this,
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that doesn't raise awareness for the next. We talked earlier about authenticity. What does that mean to you, if you were to put that into your own words?
I think being, just being unapologetically yourself. I heard you use that name when we first met. And I think just being yourself and being okay with it. And you can, if you're authentic, and I'm pretty authentic, you can tell when someone else isn't. It's a vibe, right? It's a frequency. So I think just feeling safe too, I think, being authentic for me would depend on how authentic I was being, would depend on the company I was in,
Mm-hmm.
to see how guarded I would be. But in general, I'm a pretty straight shooter.
I gather that from you. If you're willing, you mentioned earlier about problem drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to, for where I sit in my journey, I like to say the solution, because it's only a problem if it stays. Right? It's only a problem if we ignore it. Are you willing to share anything that you've been proud of what you've overcome or anything you've been through to help better yourself?
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. I am really proud. I'm 7.5 years sober.
It's amazing.
Thank you. I do still like being around alcohol. I like that vibe. I'm when I go into the liquor store and I go into the Italian wine section, I often talk to the wine. Say, "Oh, I miss you. Like, you look great, but you're a jerk." So when I realized I needed to break up with alcohol, it felt very much like it was time, and I knew absolutely that my potential was not at the bottom of a bottle of Pinot Grigio, and I'm really glad that I struggled really, really hard. I struggled really hard to get out and to start rethinking how I live my life, rethinking my habits, rethinking, and it's an unlearning. And because we're in such a booze-soaked world, I didn't want to come across as being a preacher or being righteous about why I no longer drink and talking about, the poison it is and how we're meant to be addicted to it. And so 7.5 years ago, I was like, and it's over. And it took me it took me 3 attempts to actually be able to put it aside. And that is a little bit why I do say it. I do believe to a degree Tampon Tuesday was the beginning of my drinking problem. It was because every Tuesday I would be somewhere at a Tampon Tuesday and I would be drinking.
Interesting.
And so then, and because I really wanted the location sponsor to want to continue to host Tampon Tuesday, I would immediately order a big juicy glass of wine. So other people, when they would show up at this networking event, they would also order a glass of wine. But I never drank on a Tuesday before. So that's okay. That's just I think the beginning of it. And then it just creeped into daily.
Thank you for sharing. And I know from experience, it's not easy, but it is freeing. And I think when people share, and I know you know this because even on a phone conversation, you and I talked, and your connection with someone goes up the ladder quicker.
Absolutely.
The vulnerability is there, and the trust goes faster because you think, why would they just share that? But when you share even parts of what you're done, in 7.5 years is amazing, especially for what you do and where you go. There's people it gives permission to look at themselves, right? To do an inventory and say, wow, she sounds like me. I sound like her. Maybe I'll try and quit for a month. Maybe I'll see how attached I am. And it's not just alcohol, but alcohol, like you say, we are I liked how you said soaked environment. We are in a world that has every gas station open till 11 o'clock that serves out, you can buy alcohol. It's never been more convenient for people to have that. And, I do pray for a lot of people that are in that struggle. So when you have people that have stood up, not only stood up and changed, but are willing to share, it sheds all the stigma falls away. The shame and the guilt, they're no longer there. It's you took
because you own your
responsibility.
Story.
Yes.
You're not going to own it. You're not going to embarrass me. You're not going to shame me.
No.
Because I don't drink. Who cares? I don't care what you drink. Why do you care what I drink?
That's right.
So I believe when you can own your own story and you are, the author of it and what you share, the real parts, I think that there's a lot of empowerment in that.
Yes. I agree. And I do have to, jokingly, there's times where servers are a little disappointed when a few people I'm sitting with that are ordering Pepsis. However, I think there's also a strength in that too. It's a world that we don't need to conform to. I think it's a world we need to be, like you say, authentic and be what works for us.
Because that's just an end game for the server. The higher the bill at the end of the night, the higher the tip. So there's no care or warmth or want. It's their own personal end game that our 10, 15, 20% tip is on the highest amount. And that glass of water is free and that Diet Coke is a lot cheaper.
It's so true.
Than the double shot vodka or the 9-ounce Pinot Grigio.
Let's just say, when it gets past a point, your ability to restrain, I always jokingly say I can trust sober Mark, but not for beer Mark. That guy can't drive. That guy wasn't wise with his decisions consciously. And thank you for sharing that. I'm going to skip now into a little bit more of, because of the things you do for CMHA and the things you see. I think this city, if we've been in London or you're around London, you know that this city is in crisis. This city has a severe need. In your experience and through your committees, through your work, and you do a lot of groundwork too, whether it's car washes, barbecues, Tampon Tuesdays, behind the line. What do you feel in your experience right now? What's one way as a city we could start having more awareness to what we need to do?
Well, I think it's housing. And I think people know it's housing. I don't think we need another survey or another consultant. I think it's as simple as that. I think we need to have affordable housing, not free housing, but affordable housing.
I was trying to help a friend find housing, and I went to the City Plaza office, and the poor lady behind the desk felt she was just new. And she had to tell us that it was a 9 to 10 year wait list for assisted living. And I know we're not the only ones in this province, but it doesn't, just because there's others like us, doesn't mean that the need isn't in crisis. And, we are overtaxed in most places, whether it's crisis centers, recovery, emerge hospitals, and ignoring it or hoping people will improve without having that assistance. And like you mentioned, having the living comes with one part. Now it's solved a part of their issue, but giving them purpose, giving them skills to understand why they got to where they were, and so that they don't, whether it's addiction, whether it's mental health. I think that's also a key piece that gets overlooked. You can throw money at a problem and say, okay, I've done my part. Or you can come on the ground level and hand out food to people and talk to people, and then understand that these are mothers, fathers, daughters, and sons, that when you hear their story, their testimony, it hits differently. You don't see them as the people on Dundas Street or the people in East London or wherever it may be. You see them as a human being that's suffering. And I really feel we could do so much more. And just, having, how do I want to word that? Having walked the path I've been through, and I have people I call friends that were homeless, and their testimony is incredible. It doesn't have to be a one-off. It can be, but they had to accept that they were addicted to things. They had to accept the help. And I feel acceptance is key.
It is. I agree.
Like all of us, we want to think we can survive this, or we put ourselves here and I'm going to soldier through. And we don't have to think that way. And that's the biggest lesson I take away. And I like to pass to people. I may not have the answers, but I'll help you find them. Right. I will be a bridge for wherever whatever you need. Well, we talked a little bit about this, but community connection. How can I know we can use social media. We can network. How do you feel, and this is a good question for you in your role, how do we connect to a deeper level so that people can be more engaged in what's needed, not to what they're comfortable with?
So I can only answer that from my perspective. I just really think showing up. I think that really is the first step. The car wash on the weekend, you showed up, the wonderful Joan Atkinson, and then volunteer
In
named
the Minion,
Tim in the Minion, and a server from Church Key, and then a bartender from Jack Astor's, and then the bartender's brother drives down from Napanee, and then some of the CMHA staff. And I want to be really careful. I'm a consultant for CMHA, so I want to be really mindful of how I speak about that, that work. But I really do believe the first step is showing up. And the reason why I say that is because the work I have done on Oneida Nation of the Thames, that started in 2021 to build some homes. Before that, there was some work that I had done at Losa Peace Awards. And before that, it all began with working with an Ojibwe artist named Sean Cucci. And we created an art show to draw attention to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And at that time, it was in 2016, 2017 when we created it. And at that time, the RCMP number, the stat that they were saying of how many missing Indigenous women and girls there were, was 1,167. And everyone said that number probably isn't correct. It certainly didn't include young men and men in general who have also gone missing. And that's a stat that's not talked about. The work years later to get to Oneida to be able to even have access into work, that it's because of their starting and showing up, creating that art show and working with community on these things, and not for gain on my end. And so that's why I think the first step is showing up and helping how you can. I've never shown up and written a big check. I don't have that money. So I've only ever been able to show up with my time and then connect people. And I took it really seriously in my role as community relations at CTV, is to sharing that space. Who can I draw attention to? What can we put the spotlight on? There's certain organizations that they're absolute machines and they do amazing work, and they have huge fund development departments. They have IT departments. They have people who create graphics, etc. I'm a bit of a nitty gritty kind of person, and so more likely to want to go in and show up and help build something out, because I think that grassroots, that groundswell, is when you can really see a movement.
Absolutely. And you've done a few of those builds, you said, since 2021. And I think that also goes to your passion for housing side of things. And I also thank you for clarifying too about your role. I think it's important for people to understand where you come from, but it also even shows more passion for that being a consultant, right? This is something you're choosing to help with.
Housing is a basic human right. Mm-hmm. And I recently became a grandmother.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And little sweet baby Kenny came into the world, about 4 weeks ago. And I always think about this, and when we think about what's a basic human right? Well, when I think about this baby coming into the world and then we just leave him there, we'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. That's why we know it's a basic human right, because we know he's not going to figure it out. He needs shelter. He needs to be fed. He needs to be loved. He needs to be nurtured. And I just don't understand how we got to a place where we do this to like teenagers, young adults, veterans, widows, on and on we go. It is the same. We as people, we need shelter. Yeah. We need shelter before we can possibly even remotely deal with, say, our mental health issues, our addictions, being a good mom, being a good dad. We need shelter. And I continue to be, I just find it so confounding as a species, as a society. What have we done? We know in Canada we're the wealthiest we've ever been. I'm on the board of the London Food Bank, and Glenn Pearson was talking about this at the last board meeting. Is the wealthiest Canada's ever been is right now. but yet the gap between the have and the have-nots has never been greater.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that there is enough wealth to actually solve the housing issue. So some people are making decisions, or it's dragging out, or it's taking longer. And it's really unfortunate. I don't really think it's that complex. I think people want to pretend it's complex. We are surrounded in a city where so many empty buildings, and just figure it out. I think it's because of the stigma that we see so many unhoused people. We're seeing them struggling with mental health and addictions. Well, I'm telling you, if I became unhoused, I would be drinking again, because I don't know how else I would be surviving to get to the next day if I wasn't able to numb out. And I'm not even rationalizing. I just think it's a pretty honest answer, or honest observation of what being unhoused in the city probably is actually like, and why people make the decisions they do.
Well said. I feel there's a proverb that says generational love is planting seeds under which trees shade you'll never see. Right. And I think
that's literally going to say that.
Were you?
It's so weird. I like goosebumps. Yeah.
Yes. We're in simpatico. So but it really hits, because you are a grandmother now. Right.
Yes.
And so you're even more passionate about how your grandchild, not only your children. And I think when we can start looking at it that way, it's not by, there are 2 great commandments, and one of them is love thy neighbor. And I think that's so overlooked. I think it needs, I have nieces that hold me accountable to making sure I'm waving, that I'm talking to neighbors, that I'm walking dogs with neighbors, that I'm being the neighbor that I so desperately wanted my whole life. And I feel it's not just about money. It's about connection, about saying hi. This world, we get so closed off, and we can blame the pandemic. We can blame our want to be inside all the time, or hooked to Netflix and all these things that we're watching. But I feel, especially in the summertime in Canada, we need to be outside in the backyards, talking over the fence, and instead of judging our neighbors, just connecting a little bit more, understanding, because I was a tough neighbor for a small bit, and I know people gave me a hall pass for the things that I was doing. I appreciate what you shared. I want to read you something before we finish, and I want just your take on this. It says, people change when they hurt enough they have to, they see enough they're inspired to, they receive enough they're able to. How does that sit with you?
In general, it sits pretty honest, but I have learned that just because somebody has doesn't mean they give it away. And maybe nor should they. It's theirs. Yeah.
I agree with you. And there is one part, and it's the St. Francis of Assisi, Mother Teresa kind of ish. If you want to keep it, we have to give it. And I think about that. I don't talk about money or materials. It's knowledge. It's what I've learned. It's the wisdom, as a grandmother, the wisdom you've grown with your whole life, to share it with your family. That's giving it away. If you keep it to yourself, right? And people can overlook, and we just think it's all about this and this and that. There's so much more.
There's so much more, and you're right. I was really thinking of that question as monetary, and recently, kind of in the last 48 hours, I was on a group text, and somebody was really unkind towards me, family. So it was my siblings, and I was like so caught off guard, and I knew I had to sit in compassion for this sister. And then I was like, okay, what would Michelle Obama do? When they go low, you go high. But it actually makes me think, though, about sometimes privilege isn't always what the color of our skin, or maybe the postal code we grew up in. I think sometimes privilege can also mean if we if we can dig deep, if we actually have the ability to dig deep, and for me to find grace, and instead of lashing out at my sister, I was able to like rise. And I think that part, I do believe that is privilege, that if you have certain characteristics that you can exercise, and not do knee jerk, and not like that wound that was open in the way it came out, and that to hold yourself accountable. And that's, the only thing I want to circle back on, Mark, is that I do think there is a huge accountability that needs to happen from folks who need help. I was one of them. I needed to reach out for help. I don't think it's a one-way street of just putting up supportive housing everywhere and people move in and no accountability on their end in maintaining that and following through on. I think there needs to be agreements. Because I don't think a one-way street works. I think this is flow. You know, you've been volunteering for the helpers. I saw you up behind the line. I first met you. You were one of our first guests on Triggerama. And so when you invited me today, it was like, sure, absolutely, because it can't always go one-way street. I really believe in the energy flow, and I think we can come up with a lot of excuses for a lot of different people. I think at the end of the day, we have to all do our part. You know, save yourself or remain unsaved.
Oof.
That's where I believe the power is in growth. There won't be no growth if I just give it all to you and expect then you to live your life the way I think you should live your life.
I think you've a lot to unpack for what you said. That was so well said. I think that when I stopped looking for a finish line, I stopped holding myself to a threshold saying, I've given enough. Or my mental health, my inability to look at what I can do where I'm at. And I firmly believe that we are given the right doors that are opening for us if we're willing to see them. But we have to close the past. And giving up firefighting, for example, very difficult, extremely difficult. But once I accepted that, not until I accepted that, did I start feeling like I had a purpose again, and I could use a voice. I can use myself in a field that needs a lot of help, and where so I really love how you've shared that. I thank you for your honesty, and you are an inspiration. You continue to, each time I get to know you a little better, there's something else I learn, which is amazing. Either it's something you're involved with, but I feel, you're also humble. So it's something you don't walk around, telling everyone about. But I think it needs to be understood what's molded Mandi into who she is. So I thank you for coming today and sharing space.
Thank you for the opportunity to share. I've really enjoyed getting to know you.
Thank you.
I think you're a friend.
Thank you.
A new friend.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And so this has been True Colors. This is Mark Russellelli. I thank you. I thank my guest, Mandi Fields. I encourage you to look up a few of the things we talk about. Google Tampon Tuesdays. Google the initiative builds. Even anything we've talked about for health in your family. And we can only make the system better by using it. And, I send love and blessings to anyone who needs it. And thank you for tuning in. God bless.
You've been listening to True Colors with Mark Ruscielli. Executive production by Mr. Norm Media Productions.